Hi, I'm the Naked FireFly. Welcome to my channel, Mindful Writing with a Rebel Writer. I was tagged in the author origin story tag by Mary Cosette, and I will link her page down below. But before we get into that, I wanted to give some updates. One, school started back for my children. It's been lovely and crazy all at the same time trying to get back onto a schedule, but I know it can be done, and because it's been done before, so just gotta stay on track, stay focused. If you hear any noise in the background, sorry, it's a fan. It is hot, and it's supposed to be hot today here in the South. And also you might hear baby girl little Firefly in the background with her brother. Also on Monday, I will be putting a call out for romance beta readers. So if you want any information, I will leave it in the comment section below. And if you're interested, just let me know in the comment section. Question 1. When and why did you start writing? How old were you? And which genres did you begin writing? I'm going to answer the first part of that question. When and why did you start writing? I don't exactly remember when. I do know that it was probably around 2nd grade. So however old you typically are around that grade. I do remember I always wanted to tell stories. I was a natural storyteller. And when my teacher kind of introduced us to being able to take the words or the letters that we learned how to write and creating stories out of it, I was all for it. Which genre did I start writing in? I don't know. Kids genre, children's genre. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I guess children's. Question 2. What was your first main character like? How has your taste or muses changed since then? My first character that I ever wrote, as far back as I can remember, she was French. She was half French, half African, and she could time travel. Like, that's all I know. She grew up in pre-French Revolution times, and she was able to jump through time, through the past and the future, and that's about all I remember. I remember that she was probably about my age when I wrote her, however old that was, so I'll say maybe 12 at the time when I wrote her. And how has my taste changed since then? My protagonists usually are still around my age. They really haven't changed that much. They still do things I wish I could do. They're adults, and they do adult things and think like adults. That's all I can tell you. Question 3. What's the worst writing advice or feedback you ever received? What was your first rejection or confidence breaking experience like? First part of that question. What's the worst writing advice or feedback I ever received? It actually was based on the romance that I'm writing now. I had sent it into a possible critique partner. We are no longer critique partners. And because my story is of an African background, of an ethnic background, she had questions, and I had no problem answering them. The problem was she had such an attitude about it. She's like, why does it have to be like this? I don't understand this. And when I try to explain it to her, she'd be like, well, that's crazy. I guess that's an ethnic thing. And she just had such attitude. And at first I thought it was me. Maybe I was just taking her questions wrong. But each time we would send each other stuff back, I would just give her some tips on a few things. I wasn't an expert, but I did, as a fellow writer, you kind of recognize things on somebody else's manuscript that you might not have recognized on yours. I would give her the feedback that she would need on that, and she would come back with mine like, well, we don't need to know the complexion of every single character. And that is true, and that's not what happened. The complexion of every single character was not mentioned, but the characters that were important their complexion was mentioned. And that's because majority of times in African American culture especially, and really anybody who is of a melanated complexion, your complexion in that society is important. How light you are determines how you'll be treated. How dark you are will determine how you'll be treated. And when I tried to explain that to her, she was not trying to listen. She literally just told me, this is not a romance. I don't know where you're going with this. I don't even think she really read the story. I think she just saw a few things that offended her. And I'm gonna let you know this now. After the 3rd chapter, I was just like, I don't think this is going to work. And of course, she had a little attitude because of the critiques I gave her. And she just told me I didn't understand. And because it was about an Italian family, mind you, I have been around Italian families. I had Italian friends. So I kind of understood it. That wasn't my issue. She had the cultural background on point. So that wasn't the issue. It was just other little things. I was just like, hey, you know, if you worded it like this, it might sound a little better. Or, you know, just basically trying to help her out. She attacked my whole cultural background of my characters. And she was even upset because there was not one character that was non-melanated. And I was just like, because I'm not viewing it from a non-melanated point of view. I'm viewing it from these people. Like, they do come in contact with other people of different backgrounds, but they're not, those people are not my main characters. So that was my most negative advice. Basically, she was trying to tell me to add in people if I wanted it to be a true romance. I don't know where she got that from, and I hope she's doing well in her writing career. That's all I have to say to that. The second part of that question was, what was your first rejection or confidence breaking experience like? When I got my first rejection for a story that I wrote years ago, and now that I kind of look at it, or I peeked at it the other day, and I'm kind of glad I got rejected for it, because they were right. It was a total and hot mess. And it broke my confidence at that time when I got the rejection, because I felt like, what? I worked so hard on this. And then I got rejected for it, and it was just like, why? I don't understand. But now that I look at it and I reread it, I'm like, oh, yes, I see now. So that was my first. Number 4, what part of writing or the writing process do you feel is your greatest strength? Dialogue. I think I said this in another video. Dialogue. And I still stick with that answer. Dialogue. If I can't get the description and settings right, which I, in my opinion, don't think I do it right, but dialogue. I love my dialogue. That is all. Number 5, what part of writing or the writing process is your weakest? Emotion, maybe? Sometimes I have a tendency, and I can admit this, I have a tendency to just tell the emotion if I can't think of words to describe the emotion. So then I end up telling it sometimes. I know that's my weakest part of my writing process, and I am working on it. I have been, you know, of course, researching and reading other books and seeing how they do things. So I know, I'm hoping that I will get better as I practice more, but as of right now, that would probably be my weakest. Number 6, I think I kind of answered this one already. Number 6, what strengths or weaknesses changed over the years? Additionally, what have you done over the years to better your craft? I literally just answered that. I've researched, I read other books, I go to conferences sometimes to learn from others. I watch YouTube videos. I just learn, I read craft books. The things that have changed over the years is the showing versus telling. I used to tell all the time what was the person feeling, what was going on, instead of actually showing. Now, I know you're not supposed to use showing all the time, but I couldn't balance it. I didn't know that you were supposed to have a showing part at one time until, you know, the better I got at my craft. It's like, oh wait, I'm supposed to balance it, basically. So my showing has gotten a bit better. I'm still working on it, but it's gotten better over the years. Number 7, what programs have you used over your writing journey? What is your favorite right now and why? I have used Word. I've also used Scrivener. I've also used Google Docs. as of right now, since my Mac has died, rest in peace, I do not have Scrivener for the Windows computer. I know you can get it. I'm waiting for the updated version because the one that I had on my Mac, of course, was the updated version. So a lot of my files will not open in the version that they have now for Windows. So kind of waiting on that. So as of right now, I am using Google Docs, and I am using Microsoft Word for other. I use Google Docs mostly to write and for the backup, especially considering that I will be moving soon, and I don't want anything to happen, and my stuff can't be, brought back up on a small drive or anything. I don't want anything to happen. So if I keep it on Google Docs, at least I know it's there, and I can work on it on my phone. Microsoft Word I do use sometimes for other things, for the dictation and other things, but mostly Google Docs right now, and it's fine. It doesn't have, the bells and whistles that Scrivener has, but that's okay. I'll wait. I'll be patient, Scrivener, whenever y'all decide to come out with your update. Just putting that out there. Now, question 8. Every Batman has his Robin. What is your favorite companion to cuddle or consume while writing? Has it changed over the years? If so, does this also differ from daytime to nighttime? I don't have anything I like to cuddle with while I write. I usually, before I got pregnant, I love to consume chai tea, burdock tea, Moroccan tea, anything that was a tea that either was a herbal tea or caffeine filled tea, and I would switch it up with some water and a smoothie. However, I have been reduced to lemon tea or raspberry leaf tea at this moment, which, the raspberry leaf tea is okay. It's not the same. It doesn't give the same, boost. So right now I am just drinking water and smoothies and hoping for the best. Question 9. When you first began this journey, what level of success did you imagine for yourself? Is where you're currently at on your writing journey heading for the destination? If not, how has your dream evolved over the years? On my writing journey, I imagined myself being this, author with her book on the library bookshelves when I was a kid. And then when I became a preteen or teenager, that little tween stage, I imagined me holding up my book and people running into bookstores trying to get it and purchase it, and me signing my book, because when I was 12, I got my first signed book. The author was there visiting at the BX, and it was a romance book, and she was just, selling them and whatnot, and I wanted a book because it was a book. I want to say my mother bought it for me, because I know my father would, but I definitely know my mother bought it, and she gave it to me, and it was signed, and the author put in there, like, I know you want to be a writer, go for it, don't stop. And I kept that book for the longest until the pages literally almost fell out. I want to say they did. That's why I don't have the book anymore. And then when I became a teenager, I received another signed book. This one my dad bought, and it was a military thriller, and I loved it. And I was just like, she said the same exact thing, like, go for your dreams, don't stop. And I imagined myself doing that, being able to sit at a table where people come buy my book and I get to sign it and put messages of encouragement for them in it. So have I gotten there yet? No, not yet. Do I believe I'm on the right path to get what I want? I do. I believe so. I'm going to be querying soon. Not too soon, because I still want to do the whole beta reader process. But I will be querying soon. So I hope that I'll be able to do that sometime in the near future. We'll see. Question 10. Fame. What author helped you realize your interest or passion for writing? What books helped shape your writing style, genre of choice, or taste. I love Toni Morrison, as most of you know if you've seen my previous videos, but she wasn't the one who actually made me want to become a writer. I would have to say Ann M. Martin, the lady who wrote all the Babysitter Club books. I devoured those as a younger girl, and a lot of the other books that were around at that time too. But she mostly, like when I read her stuff, I was like, I can write a book about babysitters. I babysit, and like it could be just a babysitter on her own adventures. Like I wanted to write like she did. And so she would have been one of the authors that inspired me. There were many others after her and before her as well, but she was the one that I remember off of the top of my head. Like when I read her books, her Babysitter Club books, I was like, I can write these too and have all my books lined up on the shelf just like her. So yeah, and what books help with my writing style genre of choice? Well, my writing style, I'm still, in my mind, I'm still developing. I'm sure I have one and I just don't realize it. I could be a little bit slow on those things, and that's okay. My genre of choice, like I said, my first romance book was written by this lady. The book that inspired me for my genre of choice was the first romance book that I received that was signed by an author at the BX in Belgium. I don't remember the name of the book, but I do remember that the premise of the book was like this woman, she comes to like this Middle Eastern country and to stay with this family who's always been friends with her family, and she's young. I want to say she's like in her early 20s, and the family has many boys. One of the boys I believe is married, another is, and two of them are not married. One of them is of marriageable age, the other one is still kind of young, and she ends up marrying the one that is of marriageable age, and he literally ignites her passion for being, you know, a sheikh's wife. And she performs this dance for him because she's seen it on this movie, the Seven Veils or something like that, the Seven Veils dance, and he lets her do it, but then he explains to her later, yeah, that was just in the movie, that's not an actual dance. And it was very, first of all, it was probably a lot more, it was a very beautiful love story, but at the same time, now that I look back at it, I was 12 and I didn't know about anything that they were doing in those books. So a lot of that flew over my head. And then I was much older. Oh no, I wasn't that much older now that I think about it. I was like probably 13 or 14 when I got my first Beverly Jenkins book. And then that really kicked it off for me. Like, oh, I'm writing like this woman. Because at that time, I've explained it before, I love history. And so to see this African-American romance writer writing about historical places and historical facts that I had not been taught at that time. I learned more history from her books that I would go back and research. Of course, you know, at that time, Google wasn't a thing. At that time, I had to go to the library and get an encyclopedia and find it the best way I could. And encyclopedias did not have that much information on certain things. So she taught me a lot of history, and a lot of those books I went back and read the older that I got. And then that really kicked it off. Like, I want to be like her. I want to be the next Beverly Jenkins. Maybe not so much the history, because I tried an historical romance when I was a teenager. That mess is hard. At that time, now it's not so hard, but at that time, at 16, Google was around, but it was not as popular as it is now. So at 16, you still had to do the old-fashioned, like, I think I had to go to Yahoo at that time to really do some research. And that research is hard. Research is hard, period. But to do historical romance, that's hard, because you have to make sure you got the dress, you know, the dress code right, the language right, and you got to make sure certain events line up and that you're just not, I mean, like, you can have your two lovers do things, but you also want to try to explain a little bit of the history of what's going on, but not get into it to the point that it sounds like a history book. So I was just like, no, maybe a historical romance is not for me. I love reading it, but I do want to be the next Beverly Jenkins of romance. That's just me. That's what I was thinking. Question 11. Comparison is dangerous. I agree. How is comparing your author's journey to others dismantled or helped your own? Any advice to overcome this? To be honest, before I actually began on this journey, before I actually started connecting with the online writing community, and I just connected with the ones that, you know, were more person to person, I really didn't compare myself to anybody. I was just like, I'll get there when I get there. And then when I started joining online writing communities, that made a big, big difference. I wanted to put my stuff out there as quickly as everybody else was. I wanted to just hurry up so I can join the rat race as well. And that really made me question, like, are you even doing the most? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? You're not putting in enough hours. Like, literally my mind was like, just neglect them. They're okay. The kids will be fine. The kids will be fine. When they get older, they'll thank you for it. But I had to take a step back. And this is my advice. Take a step back and really reevaluate yourself. Figure out the schedule for your lifestyle. For me personally, I have 5 children. I have a husband. I homeschool. So I do have to take a step back. I have to schedule myself. I cannot neglect my children in their education or neglect my husband in our relationship. So I get my writing time in. I have to schedule that in. Am I going to get published as quickly as Mary Sue or whoever? Probably not. However, I know that if I take my time, not only will my family not suffer, my writing won't suffer, because then if there's something that I didn't probably catch before the day before, I can go back and be like, okay, wait, that's probably not what I was trying to say. Let's go back and try this again. I have more time to do that. I have more time to enjoy what I do, and that is loving to storytell, because at one time I was starting to actually resent writing, getting up and coming to this keyboard. And now that I've stepped back and reevaluated myself, I'm just like, why? I'm about to lose the one love of my life. I'm not referring to my husband. I'm about to lose the one love of my life that I've had in my entire life, all because I'm trying to compare myself and get my stuff out there as quickly as the next person. Question 12. Looking back at your earliest project, what genres have you grown to love or hate to write? Romance is one that I have loved from the beginning, and I have grown to love more. Is it hard to write? Yes, very much so. It's not hard to tell a story, but it is hard to write it sometimes, because how you say it or even how you think it doesn't always come out right on paper, but that's okay. Ones that I hate to write, like I said, is historical fiction or historical romance. Love to read it, hate to write it. Question 13. This is actually a pretty good question. What are the most common excuses you've given to yourself or outside forces that you've overcome to prevent or prevented you from writing your story or crush your confidence? The most common, and I don't use this anymore. A few years ago, I used to give the excuse that I didn't want to get published, because for the longest time I would write, and like, you never could stop me writing. I had a notebook and a pen or a pencil. I was always writing. But my husband always used to ask, why won't you just get any of your stuff published? And the truth is, I would tell him, because I don't know what to do after I succeed. And that was the strangest thing I had ever said to him or anybody else, because they were just like, what? If you succeed, you move on to the next project. And in my mind, it made sense to me. Once I publish, then what? What is there next to succeed? And that was always my excuse. So then that actually held me back from finishing a whole lot of projects. Like, I'd start them, get halfway through, and then it's like the end of Act 2. I don't know how else to explain this. But the end of Act 2, beginning of Act 3, I would literally just stop the project, because I'm like, no. Because once I finish, that requires me to go back and edit, and that requires me to send it off. And if somebody wants this, then what? And that was what always prevents me. Thankfully, I don't think like that anymore. Now it's just like, you know what? Life is short. I want to leave a legacy behind, if not for others, at least for my children. My children can say, hey, my mom was a writer. She wrote this. She published it. Was it a bestseller? We're praying for it. But if it isn't, okay, I have something that I left behind now and that I can be remembered for. Life is too short to sit here and just be like, oh, I'm scared. Question 14. When you began, did you consider using a pen name? If so, if you're using a pen name now, why did you decide to use one? If not, why did you use your real name? I am using a pen name, using several. I say several like there's a whole lot. I'm only using 3. I decided on the first pen name, and that would have been Kierra L for the romance. And I only decided on that because I wanted to. Honestly, I was just sitting there writing the story, and all of a sudden I visualized, literally visualized, I'm a visual person, visualized my book with this name across it, Kierra L, and it was like little fancy writing, and I was like, that's my pen name. That's just it. The mystery, I've created a pen name, but I'm be honest with you, I'm not feeling it. So it's still up in the air. I don't know. With the fantasy, the young adult fantasy, there is a pen name. I have not announced it nor made a page for it or anything or really advertised it yet. And last question, question 15. Tag a few of your favorite people to do this tag on their channel. I honestly do not know who has done this tag yet. So if you are watching this and you have not done this tag, I tag you, tag your it. Go ahead and do that. And let me know that you did the tag so I can go ahead and go watch it and like it. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, on Twitter. I have a Facebook account. Every first and third Tuesday, I do Tea with Mrs. E on YouTube as well as on her Facebook page. Do not forget to sign up for my newsletter. Peace and love.